everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday 2 o'clock webinar. My name is Chad, and I will be your host as we discuss decks in Envisioneer today. So I just want to go over how the webinar works here before we get going too far into it. So what's going to happen is I'm going to do a formal webinar all about decks. After the webinar, I'm going to open up the question panel, which is located in the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to type in any questions, whether it's as we go through the webinar here or at the end of the webinar when I open it up, and I will do my best to answer those questions live online. Also, after the webinar, I will be sending out an email. In that email will be a booklet or a PDF file that you can go into. It's all about decks, and you can go and check that PDF file out on your own time and have a look through it after the webinar. So to get started with the decks webinar, what I want to cover today is first off, we're going to insert a concrete pad for the front door. We can see here in this 3D view that we've got grass right up to the front door. We're going to insert a concrete pad there. And then afterwards, we're going to go to the back of the building where we're going to insert a deck on the lower level. And then there's also a door out the back on the upper level where we're going to insert a deck up the second floor level as well. So to get started, like you can see here, I'm sitting in a 3D view looking at this house that we want to put a patio and a couple of decks onto. So like I said, I'm going to start off inserting a concrete patio at the front door here. And the tool I'm going to use to do that is under the Terrain tab, and it is going to be the pad tool. So I'm on the Terrain tab, and the tool I'm going to use is right here, the pad tool. What the pad tool will do, it will attach itself to the terrain, and once we've got it in, I'm going to go in and look at the properties and explain a little bit further how the pad tool works and how it relates to the terrain itself. When we insert items, I always recommend doing that in the 2D view. It can be done in 3D, but it does take some good precision to be able to insert items into 3D. It's just usually a lot easier to do that in a 2D view. So as I flip to 2D here, we can see the 2D view of my floor plan. You can see that we've got the house. We're on the ground floor location here. I'm going to use my zoom window tool here, so we can scroll in and out with our mouse wheel and pan around if we want, but this is a very handy tool as well, that I can click and drag a box around the area that I want to zoom to, and when I release my mouse button, it zooms right into that area. I can also use the zoom previous button down here, the magnifying glass with the arrow, and go back to the previous zoom, and I can quickly flip in and out of different views using those two handy tools. So again, zoom window, where I can click and drag a box around the window that I want to zoom to. There I'm right in close to the front door, and this is where I want to insert my patio. So as we're looking at this in 2D, what we're going to do to insert our pad is we're going to use it and click different points to outline the different areas or outline the shape of our pad. So I'm going to click 4 different points. We can see here that I've got snap points on 3 corners. This point right here is going to be a little bit tougher because we don't have an actual point to follow. And what we're going to use is the snap track tool, which you should be able to see right here on the bottom of my screen. Use a snap track tool where I can reference this point, the bottom left corner, and this point, the top right corner, and get the crossing point using the snap track tool. So I will highlight that as I'm going through, and we'll use that tool. So I erase that up. I'll get back to my pen here. First thing I'm going to do is turn on the snap track tool. Just simply come down and click on snap track so that turns it on. You can see that it's turned on. It's turned black. It's no longer grayed out. So I'm going to start off with my pad tool. When I click my pad tool, again, just like every other command, my cursor changes. Looks like a little pad footing there, or a little pad letting me know the pad command is active. And of course, my catalog on the right-hand side changes to all of the different types of pads that I've got. If we open up this, we can see we've got different concrete pads as well as a couple of different brick pads and just different thicknesses defined. So depending on what we're looking for, there's a 4-inch brick pad, or I can go to a concrete pad as well, just the different materials that we're going to be able to create this pad out of. Once you select the proper pad that you want, I'm going to start up here in the top left corner. You can see once I get into the corner of the two walls there, my cursor changes to a circle with an X. That means I've got the snap point there, and I can simply just left click to start my line. So as I drag away, we can see that I am defining my line, and I'm starting to define the outline of where my pad is. The next point is down here bottom left. Again, I get a snap point, the circle with the X, and again I'm going to left click, so again you can see that I'm starting to outline my pad here. The other thing we can see is on this corner we've got a little black node, and as we're dragging past different points, we've got different black nodes that show up on our screen. Those are the snap track nodes. So those are different points that we can reference to get this bottom point here. So all I'm going to do to reference that point and use my snap track is I'm going to come up to this point top right here that I want to reference. I'm going to hover over top of that point. I'm not going to click, but simply hover. I get the black node there, and as I drag away, it might be a little bit tough to see, but you can see a dashed line running vertically on the screen from that reference point that I hovered on. That means I've got a snap track line there, and when I've got that snap track line, I can simply left click and it puts in that point there because I've got my snap track reference. Lastly, I'll click the last point here, the top right point, simply left click again. And there's no need to return to my original point. I've selected 4 points. I've outlined the 4 sides of my pad here. So I don't need to return to that original point to close this, this pad out. All I need to do is simply right click. Right click will always bring up options, and I can choose finish to finish up this concrete pad. So now we can see as we hover over top of it that we get our tooltip showing me that it's a 6-inch concrete floor or concrete pad. And if I flip into a 3D view, we can see there now that we've actually got the concrete pad drawn in as well. If I click on the pad and right click to bring up the properties, so I can select items in a 3D view here, simply left click on it, right click brings up my options, and I want to go in and check out the properties. So you can see a couple different options. We've got different types of pads that we can do, a general pad, a concrete pad, or a masonry pad. We've got our appearance tab where we can change what the material looks like or what the pad will actually look like. But back on the basic tab here, we've got a thickness. So you can set the thickness at whatever you want. You saw the different thicknesses available when we went to choose our pad. This thickness can be set to whatever we want. But the item that I want to discuss is the hug terrain option. So what we've got is the option here to hug the terrain with our pad. So right now we've got a nice simple flat terrain, a flat piece of land that we drew our pad on. If we were doing this in the backyard or somewhere where there was a slope in the terrain, with hug terrain checked like it is, that pad that we draw in will take and follow the contour of the terrain as well. So it will take and slope just like the actual terrain slopes. If we uncheck terrain, it's going to keep the top of the terrain to the highest point of our slope terrain. So if the terrain is sloped and we've got hug terrain unchecked for our pad, it's going to keep the pad nice and level and keep it up at the highest point of our terrain. So that's a little bit about the hug terrain option. So if you do have a driveway or something that you're drawing with a pad tool that you want to hug the terrain and follow the contours of the terrain, just come in and make sure that that hug terrain tool is checked. Now the other thing I just want to highlight about a pad, if I right click with this selected, normally if we want to move things up and down on the Z-axis or in that third dimension, we've got an elevate command. So as I right-click here, we notice that with the pad tool, there is no option to elevate. That's because it is a tool associated with the terrain. It is going to associate itself with that terrain, and any properties that change with that terrain, it could change the properties of the pad itself. So we do not have the ability to elevate the terrain like we do other tools. If you do want to create a floor or a concrete slab there that you could move up and down, I would probably suggest using the floor tool, where you can come in on the building tab and use the floor tool and insert a floor by picking points and do exactly what we did with the pad tool, only using a 4-inch concrete floor instead of a pad, and then that way you can move it up and down as you need to. So that's the pad tool, and all I wanted to show you on the front of the building here. Next, I'm going to flip to the backyard, so we can see a backyard view here. So again, like I said, we've got 2 doors here. We're going to insert a lower level deck that you would come out the main floor door and onto the deck, as well as a deck on the second floor where you can come out that second floor door and onto its own separate deck. So to start that off, again, like I said, I recommend doing inserting of objects in a 2D view. So come back into a 2D view. We're still zoomed into our pad area here. I'm going to zoom previous so that I can zoom out. And if I just scroll up a little bit here and use my zoom window again, I'm going to zoom into the backyard. So the tool, or the deck tool, is located on the landscape tab. So once I click on the landscape tab here, we've got the deck tool option right here. If I drop down the arrow, we can see we've got 2 different options. We can insert a deck, or we can insert deck stairs. So I choose the deck tool. Again, my cursor changes and updates to a picture of a deck, lets me know the deck command is active, and my decks on the right-hand side take and update to different available decks that I can draw. So we can see we've got ground level construction, low level construction, and raised level construction decks that will have different properties depending on the different heights that are inserted. So in this case, I'm just going to do a low level construction deck. Again, you can see we've got different decking types here. We've got our pressure treated decking, we've got cedar decking, and we've got a composite decking option. Just like anything else in the catalog, we can add as many different options as we want. Different color choices when it comes to composite, different materials, whatever we want to create, we can take and add to our catalog to create the decks that we are looking for. If I go and choose the 2x6 cedar deck here, that's what we're going to insert. We got a couple different options as far as inserting the deck. First option, we can insert the deck as a freestanding structure where we have beams and posts close to the house that would support the deck, and the deck would be a floating structure. Another option that's quite common is the option to attach the edge against the house into the floor system or into the wall of the house. And then you might attach a ledger and attach your joist to that ledger and not need a row of posts and beams up against the house. So to highlight how we're going to do the ledger option where we're going to attach to the house, what we want to do when we insert our deck is we want to come into the core of the wall. When we come to the core of the wall to start our deck, that's going to tell the program that we want to attach the deck to the wall. So as I come in right to the middle of the core being the stud portion of the wall, I'm going to left click to start. So now you can see the line that I'm drawing across as I'm inserting the deck. It is in the core of the wall. I'm going to come right over to the opposite end. That's how long my deck is going to be. And again, in the core, the corner, I'm going to left click to choose the second point of my deck. For the depth, I can use the commander, I can eyeball it, I can lots of different insertion options. But if I use my commander, I'm going to use my mouse movement to my advantage. I'm going to move up vertically, and watching down in the commander bar, I can just simply type in 10 feet, and it will draw my deck in at 10 feet deep. Then I can come across again, and using a tool that we just learned earlier, the Snap Track tool, I can come down here, use this as a reference point, hover over the point. I don't want to click that point, I just want to hover over it to reference it. As I drag away, we can see the dashed line there that is in line with that original point, and I can right-click. Sorry, I just want to left-click there, and then right-click Finish. Again, just like the pad, I don't want to or don't need to go back to my original point. You just simply right-click Finish, and it will automatically close it up for me. And there we can see the deck. I can now click on the deck. You can see that it selects that deck, and just like anything else, it's its own element. I've got different options that I can do with the deck. I can take and click and drag corners. I can click and drag edges to change the depth or change the size of my deck. I've also got the ability to go into view the properties of the deck. So with the deck selected, again, right-click brings up options, and I'm going to choose the properties, and we can go in and see the different properties available for the deck. First option, the height above current location. So when we insert a deck, in this case I inserted this deck on the ground floor, it inserted the top of the deck to the top of the ground floor location. So as we come out that back door, the floor inside the house is going to be the same height as the deck outside of the house. So we've got the ability to change this, whether we step down or keep it flush or whatever we want to do. This is where we can change the height above the current location. And if you want to drop it down, for example, we can use a negative number. So if I want to drop it down 6 inches, create a little bit of a step, create a height difference between the deck and the ground floor inside the house, I can type in -6 inches and it will drop the deck down. Depth below ground level, so when we insert our grade, insert our deck, if we need to get below frost lines or if we insert our posts in the ground at all, this will specify how far into the ground our posts go. So in this case, we've got it set at 3'6", but we can see visually here the B dimension is from grade to the bottom of the post. Now when it comes to posts and footings, we've got the option here to include them or not include them. So just simple check boxes here. And if we do want to include them, we've got the ability to select whatever item we want. So if we don't want to use the 12-inch cylindrical mono footing, we can take and click select, go in and select a different one. Or if we want to use a different type of post rather than a 4x4 wood post, again, we can take and click on select and choose a different option. You've also got the ability to put your maximum spacing for posts, so the post distance along the support beam, what is the maximum spacing you want for those posts, and that's what you would insert into this dialog here. Next option is the frame. If I just spin the picture or the diagram here so that we can see the bottom of the frame, we can get an idea as we click on the different options how the deck is going to look. This picture will take an update on the right hand side here. So construction methods, we've got the ability to put the beam on top of the posts. So you can see that here the beam is sitting on top of the posts. I've also got the ability to put the beam flush. So as I'm changing all these options, we can see the beam changing. We can also see the position of the post changing as well based on what type of construction it is. And then we've also got the option to put a scab on each side of the post to create a 2-ply beam on either side of the post. Decking, we've got the ability to choose decking. Since we chose 2x6 cedar decking deck from our catalog, that's obviously what's been chosen for our decking. But you do have the option from here to edit that if you wish, and just again click select and choose the specific decking member that you're looking for. Spacing is going to be the spacing between each deck board. You can set that to 0. You can set that to, like you see here, 1/4 inch, or whatever spacing you want to have between your deck boards. Angle from joists, so when the joists are inserted, what angle do you want the decking to be according to the joist. The actual joists themselves, what members are being used. So in this case, you can see we've got a 2x8 seater, but again, we can go in and select and choose a different member for the joist framing itself. And whatever we choose here, we'll insert into our drawing. Again, spacing, that's going to be the spacing of the joist. In this case, we got 16-inch center, but you can change that to whatever you want, whether it's 12-inch or 24-inch or 16-inch. That's where you can set that. The overhang is the overhang of the joist past the beam. So in this case, we've got 1'6", so from the beam to the outside of the joist, that's our 1'6", and that's what that overhang refers to. The beams themselves, we can also change the composition of the beams and what they're made of. In this case, 2x8 cedar, but again, you can go into your member catalog and choose whatever member that you want. Spacing refers to the maximum spacing between the beams themselves, and the overhang will be the overhang past the posts. So the posts will go along the beam. The overhang here that you see specified will be how far past a post the beam can actually hang. So that's a little bit about the framing of the deck, and then we can get into accessories. We can see here we've got the ability to add in railings or skirting. So if we want to add in, you can see we don't have anything defined here for a railing. If we want to add something in, we can click on select, and this will take us into our different railings we've got available. We can see our cedar railings, pressure treated railings, PVC railings. Again, just catalog items that you can add in whatever railings you want and have those applied to the deck if you so desire. So in this case, I will grab a cedar railing with a raised bottom rail. I'll choose that for my railing. Skirting, again, the same thing. So the skirting around the base of the deck, we could choose to put in if we wanted to. In this case, I'm just going to leave that off and just have it show as a railing. And as I click OK, that will take and update my deck. That will take and put on the railing for us now as well. If I had to change any of the spacings, it would have changed where the beams might have gone, where the posts might have gone, and change those properties. But if we go back into a 3D view here of our backyard decks, we can see we've got the railing and our deck, and it's right nice and close to our grade. So the other thing that we can do, and this is one of the handy features about the deck tool, if I go to my terrain tab and choose to add in a slope, so I'm going to use the slope command here. I want to just put a little bit of an incline out to the backyard and have my deck set off the ground a little bit here. So I can take and insert a height. Since I want my slope to go down and my elevation to go down, I'm going to type in a negative number, and I'm just going to make it 4 feet instead of 5 feet, and that will take and slope my grade down 4 feet for me. So I'll click OK. Again, not advised to do this in a 3D view, but I'm just going to give it the old try here and take and insert that. Now you can see if I spin around here how my grade is sloping. And since it's sloped, it will automatically take and adjust my posts and my footing as required for that slope as well. So that is the lower level deck that we've inserted. So we've taken and inserted it, we've looked at the properties, changed anything around that we wanted to. Next thing I want to do is do the upper deck, and I want to take and put that in. And we're just going to use a little bit different method here. Again, I'm going to insert. I want to do that in a 2D view. So if I take and click on 2D, it brings me back into my ground floor location. In this case, I want to insert this new deck up on the second floor location. So I'm going to go to that second floor. Now we can see the floor plan updates. We've got the location of that second floor door that we were able to see in 3D. And I want to put another deck out here so that when you come out the second floor door, you're able to get onto a deck and not drop down to the lower level deck. So last time we used the deck tool and inserted the deck by picking points. That is a great method if you want to customize the shape of your deck. You can do all different shapes by inserting my picking points and just simply outline where you want your deck to be. If you've got a very basic shape for your deck, we've also got the ability to use a design wizard. So if I come up to Insert and Design Wizards, I've got an option here for a deck builder. So I click on the deck builder, that's going to bring me through the deck builder wizard, answer a series of questions, and when I come out of the wizard, it will automatically put and create a deck for me. So the first screen of the wizard, just a welcome screen kind of explaining what the wizard is going to do. The next is the option to choose what type of deck you want to do. Well, in this case, I'm going to go up to the second story. I'm going to use a raised level construction deck. Just like my lower story, I want it to be a cedar deck, and I will use my 2x6 cedar decking option again. So go ahead and click Next. Once I've got that selected, next dialog wants us to pick the shape. So this is where I'm saying if you've got a specific shape, a very simple shape, this is where you can use your deck builder wizard. So in this case, we've got the option to do a rectangular shape, an L shape, or a shape that's got a corner chamfered off or two corners chamfered off. So once you pick your shape, just a matter of clicking on it to select it, and you'll be able to define different dimensions based on the shape that you chose. In this case, we're just going to do a simple square deck. I will choose the square shape, and then I've got the ability to input the size that I want. So instead of 10 feet, we're just going to do a simple 8 by 8. So I will type in 8 feet and 8 feet. There I've got my shape and my actual size defined. I can click Next and go on to the next dialog. So the next dialog is the rotation and the decking direction. Obviously, when we've got a square deck like we've got here, the rotation really doesn't matter. But if we had our chamfered edges, we chose that shape, the rotation might matter where we've got our different options for where the chamfers are. So that's where your deck direction might come into effect if you've got a different shape. Then of course the other option is the decking direction. Which way do you want the decking to go? Horizontally, vertically, or on the 45. In this case, we will just choose our decking direction to be horizontal. I've chosen my deck rotation, the proper decking direction. Again, I can carry on to the next screen. And on the last screen here, just basically says when you click Finish, you'll have the deck on your cursor that you can place it wherever you want. If you do want to go back and change any of the selections that you made, you do have the ability to click the back button and go and make any of those changes. But once I click Finish, we can see I've got the deck attached to my cursor. So all I need to do is just simply come in and place the deck down wherever I want it to go, and simply left click to drop it down into place. Again, just like our deck below, I've got the option to select the deck, and I can move edges if I want from here. I can move corners to adjust the size of my deck. I can also click on the right click and choose properties and change the properties about the deck as well. The other thing I want to point out is the little red circles on the edges of the deck. So this applied to the deck below and this deck as well. A little bit tough to see, but each edge has its own little individual circle. If I click on that circle, I get different options about the deck edge. I've got the option to include railing or not include railing, include skirting or not include skirting, and just by clicking on one of the edges, I can apply whatever option I choose to all edges if I want. In this case, I'm just going to apply it to this edge that's up against the house. Since we didn't place this deck and have a ledger, it's going to put a railing on that edge for us. So in this case, I do not want a railing or skirting on that edge. I'm just going to take and uncheck railing and skirting and click OK, and that will remove the railing from the edge where the door is. Again, I can check this out in my, actually I'm just going to go into the properties first. So I'll select the deck and come into the properties. And the other option I want to do is I don't want to include posts or include footings. I'm going to assume that this deck is A, either self-supporting when we attach it to the wall, or B, it's going to be a cantilevered construction of some sort, and it's going to be able to be supported without any posts. So I'll click OK. We can see that the posts and the piers disappear. And when I come into a 3D view of my backyard deck, we can see that there's my second floor deck as well as my lower level deck. And then the last thing I want to show, I'm just going to flip back into a 2D view here, come back to my landscape tab and choose my deck option. I want to put some deck stairs onto this upper deck now so that I can get down to the lower level. When I click on deck stairs, my catalog on the right changes to the different deck stairs I've got available. In this case, I'm going to choose a 4-foot cedar deck stair. So you can have different widths if you want, but a deck stair will only attach to the edge of a deck. So I can take and I'm going to place this onto the center of the deck, going down, and right-click Finish to end that command. And if I select the deck stair, right-click, go to the properties, that deck stair is its own separate entity. It's got its own set of properties. Just want to highlight the option here for the size and this Extend Stair option. So if we look at the drop down here, I've got different options as far as where this stair will extend to. I can take it right down to terrain. So we can take it right through the lower level deck and right down to terrain, which probably isn't going to work too well on this situation. In this situation, we probably want it to go down more to the exact level of the lower level deck. So we got the down to terrain option. We've got an explicit height where we can type in the actual height that we want the stairs to go down. We can go down to a previous location, which in this case would be our ground floor location. That's probably what we're going to use. Or we've got the option to go down to current deck location. In this case, we'll choose the down to previous location option. You can see we've got different options here as well. Maximum riser height, the tread run, the overall width. So I can take and change these properties if I want. Maybe I'll go with 10.5-inch tread run. Maximum rise, maybe I'll bump that up. So you can play with those settings. I've also got the option for your railings. Do I want to include railings? If so, is it just on the right side, just on the left side, or on both sides? So once you've got all your properties set up, we can click OK. We can see how our deck changes to reflect those settings that we made. And if we come back into our 3D view, we can see now the deck coming down to our lower level deck and stopping. And we can see that when we put in a deck stair, it will automatically cut the railing out. So we put it on the right-hand side of our upper deck, automatically cut the railing out of that deck location, and automatically put the railing on the stairs to go down. So to review what we did today, we inserted a concrete patio in front of the front door. We used our pads option under the terrain tab. We inserted it by picking points. Picked the 4 points to outline where we wanted the pad to go. And then we also went in and selected that we wanted it to hug the terrain. We wanted to keep it nice and flat with the terrain. But if the terrain was sloping, we did have the option to take and slope the pad down with the terrain as well. Then we came in, we inserted our deck under the landscape tab. We chose our deck tool and we inserted our lower level deck with a ledger. We attached it to the house. So we went to when we inserted the deck, we went to the core of the stud portion of the wall to make sure that we attached our deck to the house. And then we went in and looked at the properties, how we can change around our framing, change around our posts and footings, add railing, add skirting, all the different properties that we can do for the deck. We put a slope into our terrain and noticed how our deck automatically updated based on the slope of the terrain as well. And then we went in and put in the upper level deck and we inserted the upper level deck using our deck wizard and going through a series of dialogues to answer some questions and inserted our upper level deck that way. We went into the properties of that upper level deck and removed our posts. And then we also inserted a deck stair, which automatically put a deck stair on for us that we then took down to the lower level and have it sitting on top of our lower level deck. So with that, I will open up the question panel. Feel free to type in any questions that you might have, and I will do my best to answer those questions live right now. Okay, so a couple of questions here. Does the pad tool put the concrete pad level with the house floor level, or does it set it lower by 6 inches, plus or minus? So like I was saying, the pad itself attaches itself to the terrain. So depending on what your building locations would be and how far off the terrain your ground floor level is what's going to define the difference between your ground floor and your pad location. If you wanted to be able to adjust that, you could adjust the height of the pad itself, or you could create that pad as a floor instead and be able to elevate it up and down using the elevate command once you inserted your floor. Next question is about the deck stair. Can the deck stair be a right turn halfway at a platform, then down to grade? Deck stairs will just be a straight run. We can't take and manipulate them like we can a regular stair. So a couple different options there. We could use a regular stair. That was an L-shaped stair that had that landing and then the right-hand turn. If we did use that option, we'd probably want to manually insert our railings as well. So we could stop and start our railings where that stair started. The other option would be to do a deck stair down to a secondary deck, so a platform deck in the middle of this stairway. So we did one deck stair down to that stair. Our landing was basically done as a totally separate deck, and then do our turn and create another deck stair off of that secondary deck that's halfway between those floor levels. So a couple different ways that we can handle that, either with the actual stair tool and manually drawing in railings, or by using the deck stair and a secondary deck as a landing to create that right-hand turn. Next question, can you attach a concrete step to the pad? You won't be able to use a deck stair tool on that concrete pad, but if I flip around to the front here, we've got our 6-inch concrete pad here. If we had a different elevation, or we had our pad up a little bit higher, that we needed a step, instead of using the deck stairs tool, we could just use our general stair tool, where if we click on the stairs, under porch stairs, we've got our concrete porch stairs that we could use, and I could take and insert those if I'm on my ground floor, and insert my porch stairs wherever I want. So obviously those are a little bit tall, but I could take and edit the properties of these stairs to be, if I only wanted them to be 1 rise tall, I might have to go to a 7.5-inch height and do it as 1 stair. There's just a simple step that I can use. Details I can take and take off the nosing if I want, and just create just a standard concrete step there and place it wherever I need it to go. So I can click OK. There's my step. I'm going to go back into 2D, and then I can take and move this step wherever I want it. And if I go back into 3D view, that's how I can create a concrete step. That one actually looks a little bit high. I'm going to take now and elevate it down the 12 inches and apply that. And there we can see that that's sitting now in front. But again, depending on the elevations that we've got, which we don't have very much difference in elevation here, but you could just place a concrete step in front of your porch or your pad using just the general stair tool. Okay, so that looks to be all of the questions that are there so far. I will leave the question panel open for another minute here in case someone's trying to type in a question. But while I'm waiting for that, again, just let everyone know that I will be sending an email out after the webinar today. In that email will include a booklet that is a PDF file that talks about everything that we went through today about decks, and you can take a look at that booklet on your own time. The other thing I want to mention about that email is included in that email will be the username and password to the webinar archive. So you can go into the webinar archive on your own leisure, your own time, and check out past webinars. They get put up there, they're recorded and put up there that you can review them at your leisure as well. Just a quick question about the pad. Can you slope a pad? A pad attaches itself to the terrain, so if you slope the terrain, you will be able to slope the pad. So if I go back and look at the properties of this pad, I've got the option to hug terrain. So if I've got a slope in my terrain, the pad itself will slope. Just to highlight that, if I come into my terrain, I'm going to do this in 2D just to make it a little bit easier, and put in a slope that goes down. Now we'll do it -4 feet to make it nice and drastic. And I want to start my slope here and slope it down out here. And if I come back into 3D, in a 3D perspective, now we can see that that pad is actually sloping down with our grade. So that is how we can slope a pad. Now in this case, we'd always have to move that step down as well, but that's how you can slope a pad. Okay, so hopefully that answers all those questions. I don't see any other questions there. So with that, thank you everyone for joining me today, and I hope to see you next Tuesday for our webinar. And enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Bye for now.